So, for good or ill, I'm going to do this on YouTube now. So I'm going to try to do this tour as a walking tour. So this is something about the town that I grew up in, which is Milton, Massachusetts. So I was in court earlier today. I was like working and stuff and did some stuff. And now it's a beautiful day. It's 2024. It's April something or other. It's around Patriots Day. And it's a beautiful day out here in the Boston area. And all the trees are blooming. There's a lot of flowering trees around Boston if you've never been here. So it's kind of a lovely thing at this time of year. And I'm on Milton Hill. And so what I want to do today is I want to try to walk maybe a half an hour from the train station up to Hutchins Field. And on the way, I'm going to explain to you how this one small area of Milton, Massachusetts has connections throughout U.S. history, going back to the colonial era and extending up into the modern era. And it's not insignificant, the kinds of influence we're talking about, or the kinds of connections. This one small area has very, very important connections to a number of aspects of American society and foreign policy and the history of the United States. So I just parked, and I'm going to see if I can do this all in one cut. I don't know how we'll go here, because the other thing is I just got a new phone. So it's an iPhone 14. And so this thing, I have problems with the buttons on it, because I'm used to having an SE. So I frequently press buttons that don't work. But I'm going to get out here. I'm going to go over to the first significant spot here. I'm going to do sort of a panorama. I'll give you a better idea of what we got here. And I'm going to walk down the train station and then back up. So, whoa. So, to do this right, I think you need to walk around a little bit in what's called Milton Village. This is also very called Milton Hill. And so behind me here, there's this red house here. I'm on Adams Street right now. You can see behind me down here, this is Milton Village. And so you can see the factories down there. There's a bridge that crosses the Neponset River. And so this area, it's an estuary. It goes into an estuary, which you can kind of see down here. I don't want to walk on private property. So this little park here with this rock is really a really significant marker to the American Revolution, U.S. history, the history of the United States. But it's important to note, so Milton is not necessarily thought of as like a town with beaches, with a yacht club, but they do have a marina down here. And so this is the Neponset River down here. And so this opens up into Boston Harbor. And so what's on the sides of it, it's a peat bog. So there's a lot of peat moss, and it's grown up a lot of cattails for a very large area. So it's not really navigable. But it was a good sort that people could fish here. And so this is the opening of the Neponset River, which comes up here. And there are some natural locks that were further built upon to develop hydropower at different points in history. And there's a number of factories down here as well. So I'm not getting to that yet. So behind me here, down the hill this way, right over here, that's where the Baker Chocolate Factory is. There were a number of other machinist factories there as well. And they're on opposite sides of the Neponset River. And in between, there's a great deal of bridge. You can still see the footprint of the old mills, the wheels that generated hydropower for factories. And there were a number of factories built around this area on the other side. This is a very naturally defensible position. So there's a rise of the land in both directions. It's not quite a bowl, but the channel that the Neponset River digs into the land affords this kind of a protected strategic area. If you look here, there's this over here, the trees over there. There's a sort of a natural protection for this marina. And so during that era, roads here were very scarce. At the beginning of the colonial era, which in this part of the country was in the 1630s, this road here, this street right here, which is called Adams Street. It's named after John Adams, the second president of the United States, and his family, the Adams family. This street, Adams Street, was before that a Native American road or trail. It was a well-developed one. And many of the streets in Milton, Massachusetts are very old and were originally used by the Massachusetts people themselves before the colonists got here. And now it's Adams Street. But just down the hill from here, we have the Baker Chocolate Factory and a number of other industrial things. This building over here, where is it? This building right over here, that was renovated from, it had been a warehouse and basically a lot of storage years before, and now it's become luxury condominiums. But this area's undergone a lot of redevelopment. What had been basically abandoned 18th century factories, a lot of that's been renovated. So the Baker Chocolate Factory is now all condominiums. That happened, I think, in the 1970s and 80s. But some of the other development here, there's now a big storage facility. And then on the opposite side from the Baker Chocolate Factory is another industrial set of industrial buildings that have been turned over to housing. And I believe that that's rent-controlled housing. So it's generally, they try to keep it more affordable. Yep, this is Milton Hill. So on the other side of the Neponset River is Dorchester. The specific neighborhood there is the village of Neponset. And I'm not sure where Neponset starts. I think it actually starts a little ways down the river, because Neponset fronted another area which was called Port Norfolk, which is now part of Boston. And Port Norfolk is where some of the first naval ships were built for the U.S. Navy. So Neponset begins over here. This is Dorchester, and then going up the river, you come to Mattapan. And along the river now, I was just up here out of sight, but there had been a wooded area along the Neponset River that's now been turned over to bike paths. And I believe that was actually the last vestiges of the reservation lands that were allotted to the Massachusetts tribe, which I don't believe still has tribal recognition or exists as a tribe. There are people with ancestry of the Massachusetts people, but I don't believe they have a political or group identity any longer. I could be totally wrong, and if I am, feel free to tell me all about it. So this here, this plaque right here, it was in 1640. Milton was a landing place. Okay, and it was through this marina people landed here. So I could get into a little bit of the early history of Milton. There were efforts by missionaries. There was a Samuel Eliot, I believe was the name of one of the individuals. There's still a school named after him here in Milton, Eliot School, Eliot Street. He was a missionary who came here and tried to work with the Native American people to try to get them to coexist with the English. But sometimes it went well, it didn't go well. But what's interesting, in this part of Massachusetts, there were towns, like the town of Dedham, for example, was originally founded as quote-unquote a praying town. So Native Americans who had converted to Christianity lived in a sort of different relationship with the English than Native Americans who still practiced their hunting lodges and did things according to their traditions in different groups. This is all before the 1680s and King Philip's War. So anyway, this sign here. So 1640 Milton Land was a landing place. Near the spot were enacted on September 9th, 1774 by about 70 patriots assembled at Daniel Vose's Inn. This is where Daniel Vose's Inn was, the Suffolk Resolves. And so the Suffolk Resolves were in many ways a precursor to the Declaration of Independence that started the American Revolution. And that happened right around here. And previously this was an inn. It was called Daniel Vose's Inn. So these same Suffolk Resolves were carried by a famous gentleman named Paul Revere as a rider to the Continental Congress at Philadelphia, where they received a powerful influence on the adoption of the Declaration of Independence. So this was put up in 1980. However, at this site, so the actual inn, you can kind of see how there's a falling off of the land here. And so the inn is still around. It was removed from this place. And it was moved, I think, about 4 or 5 miles to the west on what's called Center Street in Milton. And so you can still go to now the Suffolk Resolves house, and you can visit it. You can spend time inside there. I believe you have to book an appointment. When I was a kid, I grew up with another, I had autism, so my parents would engage me with playmates. And one of the playmates was a child of a faculty member at a private school around here, and I used to go play at his house, which was the Suffolk Resolves house. They were caretakers for the house. So we kind of got along pretty well for a few years. And so one of the things I can still remember doing is taking all of the antique swords that they had, that they would put away and then put out on display when they were showing it as a museum, because they lived in the house, and we'd play around with those. Kind of fun. It's an interesting childhood. So I'm going to start here, because down here, you can kind of see back here. So yeah, there you go.